Hey everyone, welcome to She Knows Arsenal, another live show at a little bit after 1 p.m. UK time. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the Onana links that seem to be heating up. Onana talks are said to be on and intensive through some Belgium outlets, so we're going to talk about those, as well as Spinazzola. I haven't really heard of him or heard about him since the Euros. Like, I haven't heard that name in a long time. And just kind of breaking down everything that happened yesterday and getting your thoughts and feelings on, how you're feeling, off of the back of crashing out of the FA Cup, also crashing out of the Carabao Cup not too long ago either. And just the general feeling around our season and stuff like that, because yesterday was a very tough day, but a very predictable day. I don't think there were many people that could have been surprised that we would have so many chances, not put them away, and basically have a Mustafi moment at the back, give them the winning goal, and go crash out. Like, I don't think that that's something that people were, that surprised by. It's sad that it's not surprising at this point, and a lot of people are writing off the season, are writing off the team, and are writing off the manager. And listen, I have my own thoughts and feelings on, the team and the manager and all this type of stuff. But I really need this club and this team and this manager to get all the way freaking for real and, look at themselves in this January break or whatever and say, what can we do in order to salvage the season? Like, our season just cannot be throwaways every season. They just cannot. And I think that's why a lot of Arsenal fans are getting desperate for the domestic cups, because you just want to go to Wembley. You just want to be in a final. You just want to feel like you haven't crashed out early. And I think the bar in which we're willing to accept is getting lower and lower in terms of like, okay, well, I'll take a cup, blah, 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 because it's 4 years. It's 4 years now. And that's a long time for a big club. For a big club, not winning anything for 4 years is a long time, process or not, And so I get that Arsenal want to do their process and maybe they're not worried about winning trophies right now. But some Arsenal fans have never seen their club win a major honor. They've only seen FA Cups. So yeah, patience is limited. And I've seen some wild takes like, oh my God, we should have kept Pepe and Tierney for squad depth, and that's why this team is crumbling. Have a seat. You're reaching. But I think there is genuine concern around, are we doing the right things to get to where we want to go? Because it's been a while since we've actually had tangible success. And you can only talk about XG and XG against and how many shots and field tilt and possession for so long. You can only talk about those things for so long before people start asking questions about, so where are the trophies, right? And so going out of these 2 domestic cups so early is always going to breed contempt. It's always going to be something where fans start to question. And I think we should question. I think we should put pressure on the club to take these more seriously. And it's not that I don't think that we took the FA Cup seriously yesterday. I think because we played Liverpool, we played a pretty strong lineup, but it's just so typical that we did not take the Carabao Cup very seriously. We went out of that, and then we got a really difficult opponent in the 3rd round of the FA Cup and went out. That's just so predictable because that's exactly what happened last season. In the Carabao Cup, we went out to Brighton at home, and then we turned around and got Man City in the FA Cup in the early rounds, So 2 seasons in a row, no matter who we had, no matter how much we spent, no matter where we were injury-wise, no matter where we were in the Premier League, we don't get beyond this round in these domestic cups. And if we can't even do that in the domestic cup, then I think some people are trying to understand what do they expect in the league and the Champions League, because those are much more difficult conversations, or difficult things, So yeah, it's one of those, but I think that for me personally, my feeling on the team is that it's a good team. Like, I don't question the quality of our core group. Like, yeah, the squad players, like, we have differing opinions on, Emile Smith-Rowe and Reece Nelson and these guys, like, whatever. But I'm talking about the core group of this team, for me, is very good. I don't know what's going on with them. I don't know mentally what's going on with them, but they just can't seem to break through now because of the West Ham game or whatever. I don't know how you play like you did against Liverpool and then turn around and West Ham is the game that breaks you. I just don't get it. And they haven't figured out a way to get over it and move on. And this team doesn't have enough goldfish in it for me, where it's like you have to have a goldfish memory. You have to forget. And Arteta even said that he feels like the goal scoring thing is becoming a psychological thing, which is not good. But, you know, since Arteta's been manager, we've only had one good season of goal scoring. Only one. And that was last season. The other three this season and the 2 seasons prior, we had so many conversations about why this team cannot score goals, can't score enough goals. He hasn't really invested in the attack, but he seems to always have these breakdowns at some point in the season where we're either not creating enough chances or we're not clinical enough. So you have to look at the way that we've used our resources and say, if every single season except for one, you're going to go through a period of time where you just can't put the ball in the back of the net, why are we not spending money on a clinical striker? Why, since Aubameyang has been gone, have we not spent big money on a striker, or even like just attackers, period? I think a lot of the resources that have been used have gone to DMs and back. And maybe Arsenal need to look at the next couple of windows being primarily about buying better attackers. That doesn't mean that I don't think that Odegaard and Saka and these guys are great. I think Odegaard and Saka's best roles are creators. And when they're being asked to score 15, 20 goals a season, they're going to fail. Arteta even said himself that he did not think that this team would be able to replicate the numbers that they had last season. And for me to admit that and then to not buy an attacker over the summer is just why we are where we are. We know we have major issues, but we don't address them. And it would just been nice to just take the pressure off some of these players that are not natural goal scorers and put somebody out there that relishes scoring goals. We don't have anybody that dies to score goals up there. Gabriel Jesus doesn't die to score goals. Odegaard, Saka, these guys would rather pass it to somebody off, you know? And so it's just one of those things now. You know, it's just one of those things now where I think that, you know, they need to look at some of the decisions that have been made and also figure out a way to take the pressure off of some of these players and get them some rest too, because they look like they're mentally and physically exhausted. And see how we go for the second half of the season. You know, I don't feel amazing, but I also don't feel like we can't finish strong, you know. It's yesterday was really deflating, but what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Matt G says, hey, Jess, hello to you as well. Matt G says, I'd be very happy with Onana as long as Partey doesn't leave as long as Partey doesn't leave as well. World Boss says, good morning, Jess. Afternoon for me. I am not okay after yesterday's display. Who would you replace Mikel with? I don't even know, because Mikel is not going anywhere. I think that's another like thing that we have to kind of also remember is Arteta's not going anywhere. He's not going to go anywhere until he gets his next big window with another, like a striker and all this kind of stuff. Like, they're not just going to get rid of him now, but I don't think it should be a conversation that is not being had. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or at least have a short list of people that they feel like can get us to the next level, you know, because we, you know, we've gone up, but we obviously like need a world-class manager to help us win something major. And if he's not that, then what are you going to do? You know, Lucas says he had an Achilles injury at the Euros, not the same since. Joe says, you fans are already tossing in the towel despite your squad being top 4. The season is long. You are also fickle. I mean, we're in top 4. Like, we've already mathematically dropped so many points that unless everybody else continues to drop points, we're nowhere near what you would need to win the league statistically. So I don't think anybody is in the wrong for maybe being a little bit less confident that we're going to actually win the league. We're out of 2 domestic cups and we're in the Champions League and we don't have that much experience in it. So I think at this stage, like, it's not just being reactionary and fickle. It's just, what is the likelihood of us winning the Premier League or the Champions League? you know? Moses says, just would you take Lewis Dunk? For me, he would be a good backup for Gabriel Magalhaes only if he gets injured. I don't know. I'd prefer us not to even be thinking about defenders right now, if I'm honest with you. I feel like, yeah, we could bring in Lewis Dunk or Tarkovsky or Demonde or any of these guys, like whatever, another center back. Cool. But I feel like our resources need to be shifted forward. We bought a lot of center backs and we've wasted a lot of money on defenders. We have. So, yeah, that's great. Like, we have Saliba and Gabrielle. If one of them were to get injured, we'd be in big trouble. But right now, we cannot score a goal to save our lives. So it's hard for me to even think about bringing somebody in defensively. Like in the summer, maybe, yeah, for sure. But right now, we need to start pushing the resources at the top end of the pitch, because Arteta's Arsenal always go through, out of 3 seasons out of 4, go through long periods of time, if not the entire season, flattering to convince that they can score goals, at a good rate. You know what I mean? So attackers. Like let's look at that. Gene says we need a striker and a wide forward. What's going on here? We definitely need a striker and a wide forward. We're just not going to get them in January because they're so desperate to like keep this group. Like, I don't understand why they're so desperate to keep Nketiah. I don't get it. Why they're so desperate to like not move on Reece Nelson. I don't get it. Like, I'll never understand why it's so desperate. Like, why are they so afraid to shake things up front? One of Arteta's biggest failings so far has been he has not shaken up the front line enough. He hasn't. Like, he doesn't, I don't say he doesn't care about attack, but it's definitely not his priority. His priority is the back line and the structure and trying to keep goals out, because he spent a lot of resources on goalkeepers, on center backs, and on DMs, but he has bought one forward and Trossard. He's bought 2 forwards. He got Willian on a free, and he bought Gabriel Jesus, a striker whose main attributes are outside of the box, and Trossard. He has not really attacked or done any, and he also bought Havertz, which makes no sense, so he doesn't prioritize the attack, and it's why we always go through parts of the season where we just can't score goals, no matter who's up there, whether it's Aubameyang and Lacazette or Saka and Gabriel Martinelli. Like, we just, you know what I mean? We have to score some goals, I don't know. Let's see. Michael says we can still win the league if certain policies change. Matt G says Dunk wouldn't leave Brighton to be back up at Arsenal. I agree with that. I just feel like, and Dunk is a great player, but we don't need him. We don't need him right now. We really need an attacker or something, a midfielder. Gabby Gold says, almost wish last season didn't happen, as most people have lost their heads after a few losses. Well, this is what it feels like when you're actually a good team. I feel like this statement alone is why, it's like, it's frustrating, because when you're a good team, when you lose a couple of games, it is a crisis. When you're a bad team, like we were, latter stages of Arsene, most of the time under Emery, early days under Arteta, the standards are so low that a couple of losses feels normal. It just does, because you're not a very good team. But make no mistake about it, if Liverpool or Man City were losing and not scoring the way that we are, they would be in a crisis. They just don't go through those periods of time. I've never seen Liverpool and Man City go through a state in which we go through. I haven't, where we just don't score any goals and we look like we're just like whatever, so that's the cost of being a good team. And personally, I'd rather be in the situation that we're in right now, where we have higher standards and we expect the team to win games where they're dominant, right, and score a freaking goal, than, I wish that our best season in years didn't happen, because now people have expectations and they're not just accepting nonsense. You know what I mean? So it's ridiculous. Arsenal need to get real. Like, if you're a good team, if you lose a couple of games and you've won 1 in 6, you're in crisis. It's like this mid-table mindset that we've had over the last couple of years. That shit's gone. And it should be, because we're Arsenal. We're the version of Arsenal that some people remember of when we were terrible under Arsene at the end, and terrible under Emery, and terrible under Arteta. That is not Arsenal. That was banter era. We need to move on from that. You lose a couple of games, you are in crisis. period. That's just how it is, and you start to look at things and ask questions, and the questions were already there at the beginning of the season. Let's not, people have been talking about the signings and not bringing in an attacker since the summer. So yeah, if we stop scoring goals, that's the first thing people are going to start talking about. Do you know what I mean? Matt G says, seems that Arteta is focusing on midfield and then hoping that Saka and Martinelli pick up form. Hopefully they do. Arca says they don't want to sell Eddie and Jan because they know that they can't get strikers they want in Jan. Personally, I don't think there's any difference between like Eddie being here or not. That may sound really harsh, but if you're going to play, if your group of striker options are Trossard, Jesus, Havertz, and Nketiah, you have 4 strikers and none of them are clinical. You have 4 people that can play in that center forward position and not a single one of them is clinical. Eddie doesn't offer anything physically in terms of pace, strength, height, anything that differentiates himself from the other forwards that are not clinical. So not having him there doesn't do anything. You could remove Eddie from the team right now and we would get to the summer and not a single person would go, oh my God, we should have kept Eddie. Not a single one. I guarantee it, because all of the options are the same. None of them score loads of goals, but they offer you different things in terms of what they do outside of scoring goals. Havertz can give you the link-up play and maybe some aerial shit. Jesus is good at dribbling and da-da-da-da-da. Trossard can do those types of things, be creative. What does Eddie offer besides missing goals? What does he offer? So Arsenal thinking this way where they're like, well, the only way we'll get rid of Eddie is if we bring in a clinical number 9 is nonsense. Move him on. Move him on. I'd rather see us rotate between Jesus, Trossard, and Havertz and Martinelli for the rest of the season than hold on to Eddie, who's not going to score any goals for the sake of holding on to him. They need to end this love affair with Eddie Nketiah. I don't get it. I don't know if it's because he's Hale End, but he's treated differently than Reece Nelson and ESR. I don't get it. The love affair with Eddie is so strange. The sooner that ends, the better, Manib says Onana doesn't solve our striker issues. Couple Young King says, Jess, who would that attacker be for you? I've already said I really like Sesko. I would take anybody who could kick it in the back of the net. Beggars can't be choosers. I like the look of Sesko. I like the look of the guy at Sporting too. Even though I don't know about the league that much, I like the look of him. Obviously, I take a Osimhen, I take a Solanke, I take a Wang. I'd bring in somebody who can put the ball in the back of the net, But yeah, you guys are probably like, hey, what are we talking about? We are going to talk about Onana in just a second, but let's get these feelings out of the way, and then we'll talk about Onana and a little bit about the nonsense of Spinazzola, aka spinach dip, because that's what I was calling him during the Euros. World Boss says facts, Jess, and the Eddie love affair. Anton Dunn says Jess is deeply hurt. Yeah, it's a relationship, Arsenal. It is just, I love this club so fucking much. It's my life. So when we're not playing well, it does feel very much like, oh, I hate you so much, but I love you at the same time, so. But I am hurt by the way that the club is acting right now, or the way that watching our players look like they're at a funeral while they're playing for Arsenal is everybody looked like they were so tense and like they were struggling yesterday. And yeah, some players played really well, in particular, Jorginho, Declan Rice, and the 2 center backs. But I thought there were so many moments with other players where I'm like, damn, y'all really out here struggling. It's Arsenal. Relax. Relax. It's you should be excited to score goals. I am not used to watching Arsenal team where the attackers don't look like they're having fun attacking. And maybe that's the Arsene version of Arsenal. But even in the Highbury days and shit like that, we love to score goals. And we had players that relish the opportunity to punish the opposition. This team really flatters to deceive in front of the goal. They really don't look like they have a killer instinct. And so you need to bring in guys that have it. You need to bring in guys who have it. Because even when we were playing well last season, there were moments where I think you could say that that was actually oh, well, they don't like punishing other teams. They're very kind of when the pressure is on, they don't get the job done, you know? Big says we cannot sign a project player in Jan because this is Arteta's 5th year. We spent 65 million on someone for their aerial duels and off the ball movement. Man cannot pass, and even my grand can save his shots. On the volley says exactly, Dennis, and people like Tom Canton, for instance, says that Arteta shouldn't be measured by winning the Premier League or Champions League, but only competing. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, as much as people try to make it seem like I'm a toxic positive, the same people that you guys are saying, like the toxic positives call me negative, and then super negatives call me toxic positive. Like, I'm definitely somebody that expects trophies, and I'm just don't feel like I don't like people that are disingenuous and lie. That's something that I don't like. You know, I don't like people that lie and pretend as though the entire fan base thinks the same. The reason why I know the entire fan base doesn't think the same is because I'm actively somebody that looks at what people are saying, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, like so. I don't know what to tell. I don't know what to tell people. If you don't feel like Arteta should be measured by the trophies that he wins, then is this Arsenal or is this fucking Brighton? Like, I don't know what to tell you. Leopold says we need to sell Eddie, ESR Nelson. We could combine money for Tony. So let's talk a little bit about that. There's 200 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, something that is interesting to me is that people are still speaking like we're not creating chances. I'm sorry, you guys. We missed 4 big chances yesterday. The system is not broken. The players are not firing. That's the problem that we have. So when I still see people saying that like the attack has run out of ideas, or you know, we're not creating chances, or the system is not blah blah blah, it ain't that. We're beyond that. We've been beyond that for like a month now. Arsenal create loads of chances, lots of chances, and we just, if we had just like a decent forward out there that it wasn't all in their head all the time, they would make those chances look so much easier. Like if you switch Liverpool's attack with our attack, they wouldn't have scored anything. Liverpool attackers in front of Declan Rice and Jorginho and stuff, they would have scored 5-6 goals. So it's not really, we're not in that same, we're not there anymore. So it's not really the system that's not creating the chances. The chances are there. Now, I don't know if sometimes maybe it is the system in terms of like Martinelli and Saka being so far wide and things like that, but it wasn't that yesterday. Like we were in their box all the time, you know, so let's just keep that in mind. But this is coming from John Cross. Take this with a pinch of salt, but he says, unless Arsenal cash in on Smith Rowe or Nketiah by January 30th, then there's no room to sign a striker or even a midfielder, and that will have to wait until the summer. Like a few big clubs, Arsenal have spent their allowance on transfer fees and wages and cannot risk breaking FFP rules with another big deal. Arsenal are looking to do a loan deal to strengthen their defense, but have no room to maneuver for a big deal unless they make a big sale, which looks unlikely at this stage. The fact that we're still seeing the same nonsense go around about Arsenal unwilling to sell when we know that Crystal Palace are very much so interested in Eddie just screams unserious behavior for me. Like I said, you could have Martinelli and Havertz and all of these guys playing center forward. You wouldn't miss Eddie for a day because Eddie is not clinical and he doesn't score loads of goals. He just doesn't. He scored 3 goals against Sheffield. Big whoop. Like since then, he's only scored 1 goal, and that was against PSV in the Champions League. That was a long time ago that we played against Sheffield. That might have been in November. We're in January now. So, and he plays loads of minutes. He plays more minutes than anybody else off the bench. So I don't want to hear any nonsense about it's unlikely that we sell. Why? I don't get it. Like we have a player that a club is desperate to buy, and we're acting like he's a good player that we should be keeping. Doesn't make any sense. So if we don't bring anybody in, it'll be because we're pussyfooting around moving on a player that was never good enough to begin with. That has interest from other Premier League clubs. Just keep that in mind. But Arsenal are exploring a possible deal for Everton midfielder Amadou Onana. The Toffees expect a fee in the region of 50 million for the Belgium international, though their perilous financial position could prompt a sale in the coming weeks. They need money. And so this is an opportunity signing, I guess. And this is coming from a Belgian outlet that's supposed to be really reliable, saying Arsenal are in contact with Everton to discuss a deal for Amadou Onana, and they considering a bid. Everton does want a jackpot. It is aiming for at least 50 million. Onana himself is open to joining a club higher up the league. Well, I'm glad he's interested, you know, whatever. And Sasha Taliaferri, who's a Belgian person and journalist, says Arsenal intend to push for Amadou Onana also, and Arsenal are considering making an offer at EFC, and the deal could be done quickly. Who has always put his priority to stay in the Premier League. He's keen on the move. Things can develop quickly. Wait and see. So, I mean, that's not something that I feel like a lot of Arsenal fans would be excited about, because Amadou Onana, if there's one thing that he's not going to help you with, is goals. Like, he is somebody that does not score goals. He is the type of midfielder that's more of like a workhorse. He's an extreme athlete. I'll give him that. Like, he is definitely somebody that next to Declan Rice, it's thou shall not pass. You know, the two of them in there would be a nightmare to play against. But I feel like, yeah, he's not going to help you with the goals, that's for sure. But I also feel like Arsenal are not going to maneuver away from the initial plan, which was to buy a striker in the summer. And because they're so desperate to keep that, they're just not going to make any move for a striker and attacker. I think any like normal club would, but Arsenal are very beholden to their plan. But I have to start questioning a plan that has you linked with Gundogan and Mount, and you end up with Havertz, and then we're in January and we can't score goals. Like, is the plan actually good? Is it something that we should be holding on to, or should we veer away from the plan because maybe we've derailed a little bit, you know? But Amadou Onana is a good player. He's not my cup of tea. You guys know if we go for this type of profile, I'd rather us knock on Monaco's door and ask for Yusuf Fofana, because he's a much better player that offers a more well-rounded game that probably wouldn't cost you an arm and a leg. But Arsenal love buying from the Premier League, which means to me that they're okay with playing a premium. Not what I would do, but it's your money, whatever. But listen, he's saying that the talks are intensive, currently ongoing between Everton and Arsenal for Amadou Onana. And so we'll see, we'll see. But what does that say about somebody like Thomas Partey? What that says to me is we don't trust you, and we shouldn't. If you bring in somebody like Amadou Onana, that basically spells the end of Thomas Partey. And I'm totally okay with that, because the guy, we don't even know when he's coming back. Arteta said, hopefully it's weeks, but not months. I don't know what's going on with the guy, but he's not anywhere near coming back. So, Arsenal cannot risk the rest of their season off in the back of this guy's injuries. And they also shouldn't do that with other guys as well. But this looks like the most likely thing that they'll do is bring in somebody like Onana. He doesn't lift the ceiling. He just gives you more legs. So he just gives you more legs. I mean, it's not exciting. He's not, you know what I mean? Like, he's not somebody for me that, like, we sign him and I'm going to be like fucking excited. I'm just going to be like, okay, another midfield body. Cool. Let's go. Let's move on. But I'm interested to see what you guys think, because like I said, when I said that Arteta is less like Pep and more like Sean Dyche, they came for my neck. Now we're linked to Amadou Onana for real. And so I think somebody should maybe apologize to me, because I didn't deserve the slandering that I got. You guys didn't like you didn't like the message and you didn't like the messenger, but that doesn't mean I was wrong, Woo! I need that coffee so bad, you guys. Woo! What? Okay. Let's see what you guys are saying. Mr. Mad Hatter, thank you so much for your super chat. This is very, very kind. I really appreciate it. You guys know you got a little addict on your hands, so this all goes back to my addiction. So thank you guys so much. The Mad Hatter says he is stubborn. He has sacrificed the first half of our season on Havertz and Raya. Replacing Ramsdale when he was playing well must have affected the locker room as well. Not Arteta out, but questions must be asked. This is the second time that somebody has mentioned this. And I'm all for reading between the lines. Like, I think that sometimes you can get a sense of things without actually knowing, right? And I don't think it's that far fetched to think that some players in the team may have not loved the way that the Ramsdale thing went down. I can see that because Ramsdale was very popular, very well liked amongst the fans, amongst the club, and the other players, So maybe there was a little bit of something. I don't think it's affected Saliba or Gabrielle because, as far as I'm concerned, the two of them have went up a level this season. So I don't think it has anything to do with them. It hasn't affected Declan Rice, who's very good friends with Aaron Ramsdale. He's playing fantastic. So I don't know who these players are that could have been affected by it. But I could understand maybe some players being like, what the fuck, because Ramsdale wasn't somebody that was on the top of the list. He was on my list as somebody that needed to be upgraded. I'm not as big of a Ramsdalian as other people. I think he has some major flaws that will always be the reason why we don't win with him. But that being said, the way that it was done was a circus, and it was so unnecessary for a team that needs to only be focused on removing the scars from last season, playing with freedom and fun, and winning trophies. The last thing that they need is Raya Ramsdale debacle at the beginning of the season. Arteta made a fucking mess out of that. He did. And it still isn't quite cleaned up either, but I'm happy to see that Ramsdale looks like he's gotten his confidence back. Looks like he's, recovered from whatever, the whole situation. He looked good yesterday. I don't think he was at fault for either of the goals, if I'm honest with you. How could he stop Kivior from heading it in the back of his own net? And the last goal was just more of like Arsenal were pushing and got caught on the counter. What can you do? But yeah, I think, of course, questions should be asked. 100%. I don't think it was just blind faith. Blind faith off of somebody that has never managed a football club is so dumb. Like, I don't think people understand how bad, like in any other walk of life, if somebody has never done a job before, you're going to question the things that they're doing. Even if they got an education, even if they went to school for it, you're always going to trust the guy that's had 15, 20 years experience in the position rather than the novice that has 2 or 3, So the idea that we shouldn't ask any questions because he got us into a title race. Ole Solskjaer had Manchester United in a title race. It doesn't mean shit. Also because we've fallen away already this season, So of course we should ask questions 100%. But yeah, I think we made maybe some unnecessary moves that we didn't have to. We did it in a very messy way. And I'm a little bit less, I get the Raya thing. The Raya Ramsdale conundrum for me is wild to me, the way that it was handled. But the Havertz thing for me, bringing in somebody that needed therapy, and I'm not even joking, how low this guy's confidence was to bring him in a position that was so important to the balance of our midfield. And for him neither to fit comfortably in that position or an attacking position, somebody that hadn't scored a goal in 20 games, and we spent 65 million on him. Of course, you're going to ask questions about that. I don't think we're going to get away from that. I don't think unless Havertz becomes the player that he was at Leverkusen, which was a generational talent by a lot of people's definition, we're never going to hear the end of it because he's never going to look like a 65 million pound player. If we had spent 30 million on him, I could have understood, but we spent double what he's probably worth at this stage. And that's a nonsense, Thank you so much for your super chat though. I really appreciate it. 100%. So, but yeah, listen, Amadou Onana is, I don't know what to think about it. Because I'm also trying to understand where we're getting this money from. Because even if they do have problems money-wise, so do we. So do we. We have money problems too. So I don't know where we're going to get this money from. But, I could, would I say, okay, sell Eddie and bring in Amadou Onana? Yes, I would. Because I would sell Eddie regardless if we brought anybody in, period. But because nobody's going to be desperate to buy him in the summer. Trust and believe that. We'll be having these conversations about why nobody wants to buy Eddie in the summer if we don't sell him. Trust. But Onana does solve one of our issues, which is when you put in Jorginho in certain games, you lose a little bit of your physicality and things like that. And that's only something that Thomas Partey can bring to us. Amadou Onana is not going to replace what he can do on the ball. But right now, no matter what midfield combination we have, we can pretty much create chances at will. And so I'm not really that worried about, oh my God, we need a left center mid that's going to do all the passing and all that kind of stuff. That can wait until the summer. But what we do need is somebody that can allow us to be more sturdy and more physical and all that kind of stuff and not get ran over. Because you can't take Jorginho to the Etihad, can't take Jorginho, to whatever, And so, yeah, I would take him, but I'm not going to be jumping for joy, you know? Like, that's just the truth. I'm just not. So, yeah. Um, Saliba says our season is over anyway. Lucas says Onana is good, but aren't we going for Zubamendi in the summer? Do we need 3 DMs for 200 million? That's a really good question. I do think that, like, for me personally, like, I think we need the Zubamendi profile, and I think we also need the Onana Fofana profile. I think we need both because they're different and they offer different things. I think one of them allows Declan Rice to play further forward, and the other one requires Declan Rice to play in the 6. And I don't mind having both of those options. So I don't know if I'm not desperate for it. Like, I would only really want to bring in one midfield. Like, if I had to choose between bringing in 2 midfielders and a striker, or 1 midfielder and 2 attackers, I would choose 1 midfielder and 2 attackers and just deal with life. If shit hits the fan, shit hits the fan. But I know that at the end of the day, I'm going to score loads of goals, right? But I think Arsenal are more desperate to get in 2 midfielders and 1 attacker. If they don't bring in 2 attackers in the summer, I swear, like, I don't know what I don't know what I was gonna say. Like, I don't know what I was saying. All I'm saying is I swear. Like, I swear I'm gonna. I don't know. Like, because I'm still gonna watch Arsenal and stuff like that because I'm weak. But yeah, like the Jorginho. So think about the way that Jorginho played yesterday with Rice. I've always felt like Arsenal need the option to play in a double pivot. I felt like yesterday was a double pivot in a lot of ways. We didn't see Declan Rice going as far forward as he usually does. And I think the balance of Jorginho and Declan Rice is right. I think it's right. And it allows Odegaard to remain more forward, right? The problem is that Jorginho is old and doesn't have the legs to do it. So that's why I want to get somebody like Zubamendi in, because he's basically a younger, more what's the word? He's a younger, more physical version of Jorginho. I want that player. But you also need the option sometimes to take that player out and just bust people up. And that's where you get the Declan Rice plus a Fofana or Declan Rice plus Onana. You need options, right? And so, yeah, for me, that's just me. That's what I would want, Slevin says Onana is not good enough. This madness needs to stop. Yeah, I mean, he's not what I would go for right now. Again, I'd go for Fofana. But all these guys are the same category for me. These Onanas, Fofanas, Conor Gallagher types. They don't score goals, but they're important to the team. Sometimes you need somebody out there that's going to do the hard work. And so they don't always start in your team. They're probably not a part of your starting 11, but there's somebody that you can bring off of the bench and change the style that you're playing or change the game. Sometimes it would be nice to be able to bring, if you have Jorginho and Declan Rice and you're like, down, okay, we're winning the game. Well, we just need, a little bit more sturdiness, or maybe we need to, instead of trying to pass through the middle, we need to just run through the middle. That's what these players can offer you. And so I think we need this type of player. Does it have to be Onana? No. Do I love Onana? No. Whatever. But I do think we need this profile, because I think we're limited in what we can do in our midfield because we don't have Thomas Partey. If we had Thomas Partey, we'd have so many other options. But because we don't have him, we're limited. And so you need these 2 players to come in at some stage, to offer us all the different. It's basically Declan Rice and Odegaard +1. And so the +1 is either more of a passer, more of a controller, like a Jorginho type, or the +1 allows Declan Rice to become the 8, and that person sits back there and does all the bruising. That's all it is. So I don't think it's wrong to get more physicality and athleticism at Arsenal. I don't think that that's a problem. I just think you have to play to that style as well. Just make sure that if you bring in somebody like an Onana, you're playing to his strengths. You're not asking him to chef up a meal at the base of our midfield. You give him the reins to take the ball and dribble forward, because one thing that guy can do is win the ball and take these big touches and get up the pitch. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just different strokes for different folks. It is what it is. Defoe says Onana has something in him that can help Arsenal. He can be tough and boss that midfield, and I've seen him do it. I would be happy to have him. Jorginho is outrun by these boys all the time. Jorginho won't be that type of player will not be the right option all the time. That's for sure. Lucas says he wants Onana to score more corners. You'll also be good on corners. If you could actually get it above the top, the first man. I mean, some of our corners are abysmal. Like, they're actually shocking how bad our corners can be sometimes. But yeah, like, again, he's not somebody I'm going to jump for joy for. I wish Arsenal would just do the right thing. The right thing would be to save all your fucking pennies, right? Save all your pennies, everything that you have, and go get 2 players, 1 striker, yay, 1 striker and 1 midfielder that just change the game. None of these side dishes, none of these 50 million pound Premier League midfielders. Go out there and go ask for fucking Frankie de Jong and go out there and get the striker. Just do that. If they did that, that would actually make me happier. And don't get shit else. But Arsenal like to do this thing where they bring in a 50 million pound thingy here, 50 million pound thingy here. None of them really are world class. None of them really change the game for you, whatever. Only Declan Rice has really done that. And I would like 2 more of those types of signings. I'd rather get more bang for my buck and get 2 world-class players to take us to the next level than keep buying a 30 million here, 40 million here, 50 million there. But, I don't run the damn club, so it's not me, but 50 million for Onana just seems like, this is what 50 million gets you these days. But the game is the game, Boy says most of the 50 million players we can get from our academy. Slevin says Onana is nothing like Essien. He sure ain't. He sure isn't. Please, Michael Essien, he played for the Ops, but Michael Essien was one of my favorite players. I love a DM. I love those types of players. That's why when we got Thomas Partey, I was gassed, because I was like, these types of players are like, you need these players in your team. And Arsene just forgot that we needed these players in our team for a long time. Now we have Arteta that wants to stockpile them. You know what I'm saying? So let's not disrespect Essien, okay? Let's not disrespect Essien. Essien was far and beyond anything Onana can think of, Onana's a good player. He's not anything special. That's just the truth, Foxy says Andre 25 million, Redondo 8, cheap options, much better than Onana. I don't want cheap options. I want us to go out there, cobble up your little fucking pennies or pounds or whatever, cobble them up, sell Eddie, sell off all the deadwood, get 200 million and go offer 100 million for Frankie de Jong to Barcelona and go offer 100 million to somebody else for their striker. The guy from Sporting, go offer it to whoever. Just go do that. Go get me 2 world-class players and stop the nonsense. That's what I would do. I don't like spending 50 million here, 50 million here, 50 million here on players that are just not really going to lift us up to the next level. I'd rather us cobble up all of our money and spend big on players that really would change it for us. But we don't do that. Boy says Arteta's gone insane. He refuses to play academy kids. He refuses to sell Nketiah. He refuses to sell ESR or Trossard. He played fucking Havertz center forward. He's gone mental. He's a danger to the club now. That's so funny. Boy, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at you. Said he's gone mental. He's a danger to the club. That's hilarious. But he needs to be reeled in a little bit, and he needs somebody in control of what he's doing. He needs control over what he's doing. He cannot have carte blanche to just do whatever. And for people that are like, oh my gosh, like, why do you think you could just go to whatever club and spend 100 million? I'm like, because if you stop spending 200 million on nonsense, and stop wasting money, and you spend more money like you did on Declan Rice, like, who knows? I don't think Frankie de Jong would cost 100 million, but what I'm saying is that, like, I'd rather get quality over quantity. We're doing a lot of quantity and we're making a lot of misses. Like in the summer that we bought the 6 players, only like 3 of them ended up being any good for us. 3 or 4 of them, maybe. No, 3 of them, because Tomiyasu is a crock. I like Tomiyasu, but he's always injured. So we bought 6 players, and like only 3 of them ended up being really consistent good players for us, and we're already replacing Ramsdale. Yeah. We spend money on Fabio Vieira, 35 million pounds wasted, Kivior, 25 million pounds wasted. Like, I'd rather us not waste that money and take 75 million and say, Barcelona, I know you're broke, give us Frankie de Jong, or somebody of that caliber that's actually going to change the trajectory. Like, we just don't, we like to make little ass signings that don't make any difference. So we're going to spend 50 million on this guy, or we want to, or we're trying to, whatever. Like, this is not what I would do. This is just not what I would do. Faya says Arteta is getting on my nerves, just like useless players he has faith in, like Eddie and Havertz. We didn't need Raya or Havertz. We needed a striker in Madison. Saliba says Arteta hasn't done anything for us. He just made us an embarrassment buying a dog and bottling trophies. Well, I mean, he didn't make us an embarrassment because when we came in, we were already a banter club. I think people also need to relax just a little bit. Like, I get that we're all upset and all this kind of stuff, but Arteta didn't make us an embarrassment. The embarrassment started pre him. It actually started when Arsene was manager. So he didn't make us into an embarrassment. He just, we're going through a really difficult period. And so Arsenal need to get it together. But he didn't make us an embarrassment. We were already one when he came in. Let's keep it real, Nuances says to put things in perspective, we spent close to 100 million on keepers and ended up with poor keepers in Emmy. Make that make sense? Spend that 100 million up there, push it up there, like up, up, up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, stop wasting money back here. Like, up. Spend that 100 million on something else and spend it on one player. One or two, one player. I don't know. Aja says, Everton fan here. I would be happy if you give us the money. Fair enough. Lucas says there has to be a player of Onana's profile, somewhere 20 to 30 million. Where's Edu? He will pay 60 million to Everton. His name is Yusuf Fofana, and he plays for Monaco. Like, it's just so obvious. He has 18 months left on his deal, and he was about to go to Nottingham Forest this past summer for 35 million. Nottingham Forest almost had Johan Bakayoko and Yusuf Fofana in their team. The only reason why they didn't have them is because they got the deal done between the clubs, but they couldn't agree with the player. Because obviously Yusuf Fofana is a French international. He's not going to slum it at Nottingham Forest, right? So they could have gotten him for 35 million. That is a French international player for 35 million. That's bang for your buck. That's another Kudus type deal. But Arsenal will spend an additional 30 million on top of that, or 25 million, to bring in this guy. And I just rather us just forget it. Forget it. Like, if you're not going to be smart in the market, then give me more Declan Rice signings and just play academy kids in those empty spaces. Because what we're doing now is we're spending a lot of money on players that aren't really changing the game for us, that aren't really trusted for the manager, and the money is just getting wasted. Either be smart and get smart signings that give you good bang for your buck, or cobble up all your money and do Declan Rice signings that actually change or take you up a level. What the heck? Do something better. I'll name this account later, says the season has been shocking from Arteta. I think he's a good coach, but not a good manager. I have never been a big Arteta fan. A lot of people haven't been. And that's the other thing, is like, I don't think that you have to love Mikel Arteta. I think we've gotten into this place as a fan base where the overall feeling is that, like, you have to be 100% behind him all the time, or you're toxic or whatever. And I just don't think that that's the truth. I don't think he's done enough for Arsenal fans to be fully behind him. He hasn't won anything anywhere else, and he hasn't really won anything beyond the FA Cup at Arsenal. And he's had some really poor seasons where they've all collapsed at the end. This one has collapsed midway through, but the other, actually, yeah, I mean, two have collapsed midway through and two have collapsed at the end. So either, like, can we not go through a season without collapse? So when you miss out on your targets every season, early, almost every season, or embarrassingly so, like we did against Sporting and against Villarreal and against Olympiacos in the Europa League, you cannot expect the entire fan base to be fully behind this manager. And the idea that we should be, or we're toxic or negative, is stupid to me. Whatever happened to varying opinions? Like, it's not that deep. Now, I think the people that are super negative to the point where they're making it seem like not a single player on this team is any good, the manager hasn't done any good things, blah, blah, blah. That to me is like, okay, you're doing the most. And so people like that their opinions end up falling on deaf ears because you can't hear beyond the screaming and yelling. I can't hear you because you're just making big generalizations. And yeah, when people are upset, things that are said tend to get overlooked because people just accept the nonsense. I'm sorry, but I'm not really going to be listening to somebody who says Saka shit, Martinelli shit, Odegaard shit, Arteta shit, everybody shit, the whole club shit. No, because it's not specific enough. What the problem we have right now is Arteta going to become a world-class manager before we lose these players? That's where I'm at with it. If he's not going to become a world-class manager, then we need to look elsewhere because that's what the job requires. In order to win major honors, in like right now, you have to be world-class. You cannot be an average Joe. Average Joes don't win. They can get close, but they don't win. They just don't. So that's really where the conversation lies. But when you start yelling and screaming and just saying that everybody is shit, I can't really hear you. But equally, if all you have to say is, how dare you even question Mikel Arteta because he got us in a title race, I also think that that's wrong. Again, there's a lot of gray area here that people miss, and it's just boring. At this point, it's just boring how we go from one extreme to the other, and everybody thinks they're right. But when we're in a bad period, I see that people just decide that like everybody is crap. And I cannot listen to that. I just cannot, because our players are not bad players. They're actually very good. Like I've always said, if we decide to sell Saka, he goes to Man City and he smashes it. If we decide to sell Martinelli, he goes to Liverpool, he smashes it. These players are not bad. They need to be taken to the next level. And whether or not Arteta can do that, especially when he really suffers when it comes to coaching a potent attack, that's the question, because our big resources are like, our big players are up front, Saka and Martinelli. We need those players to be good. We need those players to work. And right now he's not getting enough out of them. Whether that's on them or not, that's up to you. But, every season we go through a period of time where we just can't score goals or we don't create enough chances. But yet and still the manager refuses to buy attackers. I don't know what to tell you, let's see. Sam says Arteta just isn't developing these players with so much potential. Boy says, I really want nothing to do with Jesus now, or Jesus. MM says, I wish we had a miracle player like Salah or KDB. They refuse to buy those types of players. Like I said, we have special players in other positions like Saliba and Declan Rice, but all of our best resources in terms of like, those players are back. Like, as much as that, like, I'm not saying that Saka and Odegaard and Martinelli are not fantastic. I actually think they are fantastic, but there's a difference between players that are a part of a really good attack and a player that kind of like makes that attack spark, or the type of player that no matter what, they're going to show up with the goods, no matter what the circumstance is. And Arsenal are missing that star magic player. That player will make Saka and Martinelli and Odegaard much better. That doesn't mean that we have to throw them out. Do you guys really think that Freddie Ljungberg and Robert Pires and these guys would have won anything without Thierry Henry? They would not have. You have to have that special sparkle player. You have to, you have to. And so it's not that those players are not good, is that they're not the special sparkle player. And Arsenal are really missing that. Every other team has that. Liverpool have Salah, Man City have KDB, the special sparkle player that no matter what happens, they're always there. They show up, they score the big goals. We need that. And that player makes everybody else so much better. Just because Salah is the sparkle special player did not mean that Firmino and Mane were not fucking fantastic. And I think that's the problem that I have with the conversation, is that because Saka and Martinelli and Odegaard are not the special sparkle players that maybe we expected them to be, that we want to throw them in the bin. I am not throwing those players in the bin. They're too good. They'll go to any other team and absolutely smash it. Why? Because they'll be playing with special sparkle players. Okay. So we need to bring that player in. That player is going to be our striker. It just is. That player is going to be our striker. It is. And so Arsenal need to figure out who that player is. I don't think it's Tony. I don't think it's fucking Tony. I don't. So they need to figure it out. So yeah. Faya says a lot of strikers are out there. Arteta is just being stubborn, just like last season. Omar Marmoush is a good striker. All they have to do is look. They're out there, and we can use a 4-4-2. June says, what is the update on Partey? He's injured. That's what's the update. What else is new? Maraca says Arteta's late subs show how stubborn he is. He is ruthless at keeper department, yet other positions not acting the same. I agree. I think if you're going to be super ruthless with a position that nobody thought was a priority, or most Arsenal fans did not feel like was a priority, then for you not to be ruthless with the likes of Emile Smith-Rowe and Reece Nelson and Nketiah just feels it just feels like our all bark, no bite. It's like I'm willing to fuck up the season by making a huge decision and bringing in Havertz and also messing up my goalkeeper situation, because for me, it was just too fucking messy. It's always a number one. And removing Ramsdale and benching him was always going to put you in the spotlight. And so you did it, and it hasn't really worked out. And I think a lot of it is because of how messy it was from the very beginning. Right. And so you're willing to do those things, but you're unwilling to make the simple decision that I feel like so many other people would do, which is move Eddie on. I don't get it. I never will. And yeah, the late subs are just what he did to Trossard and ESR was just absolute bullshit yesterday. It's bullshit. Bringing him on for 3 minutes. Eddie got on before them. He does not like those two players. I'm convinced. He doesn't like those two players. I'm convinced. He doesn't. John says, I really want to see Walters and Sousa play. If they turn out better than White and Zinni, we might save some money for the summer. I don't think they'll turn out better than them, but I mean, we already have Timber, and I think all we need to do is just buy another fullback. I think Rule Walters and Lino Sousa, I would love for them to be integrated, but they're not going to be. And I don't really trust Arteta with bringing them through anyway, because I don't know if he would know how to do it, So yeah, I mean, in a pinch, I would take them. But if we're talking about would I rather in the summer look if we can get somebody versus I think those two players need to go on loan, But in the season, while we're suffering right now, I would take them over using whatever little resources we have on a defender, if that makes sense. In the summer, buy a defender. Right now, use your academy, So yeah, Nuances says, I love Odegaard. Hearing our fan base constantly disrespect him does me in. You guys know, I don't really understand the Odegaard thing. I made a comment, and I know people were watching because I kind of saw it went out on Twitter, but I made a comment and I said what I said. I know why people don't like Ben White and why they don't like Odegaard and Zinchenko. And it's not because of just their footballing ability. But I won't even go into it anymore because it's a touchy subject, but I have no tolerance for the nonsense. You have really good players in your team. You need that special player to take them to that next level. And they need that. Odegaard would play a lot better with a good striker. So would Saka. The two of them are natural creators. They're two of the most creative players in the league. And they're just not getting the assists that they probably deserve. And if you take some of the scoring burden away from two players that are obviously fluffing their lines because they're stressed out about scoring goals, and you put that stress and responsibility on a natural goal scorer, I think that will solve a lot of your problems. When you're stressed out about something, you can't do it. But when you're relaxed about it, you'll do it, you know? And they're not relaxed about it. They're not relaxed about it. You could just tell they're like, I have to score 20 goals. And so they're fluffing their lines, you know? Um, so yeah, but I also have a sidebar concern. There's 250 of you guys in here, so make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I also have like a secondary concern about whether or not Arteta would be able to get the most out of a striker anyway, because not a single striker has done well under Mikel Arteta. Now he's bought one that his main attributes are outside of scoring goals, but Eddie's not that good under Mikel Arteta. He fluffs his lines quite often. Maybe that's just because he's not very good. That could be it. Jesus, I think, has regressed since being here. He's gotten all in his head and is giving Lacazette. Lacazette also regressed under Mikel Arteta. And, you know, what attackers have actually done well under Mikel Arteta? Whether we may have varying opinions on the quality of the players, but the only attacking players that have done well under Mikel Arteta, no matter if it's Pepe, Lacazette, Aubameyang, Saka, Martinelli, all these guys, the only one that's kind of done well consistently is Saka. And I just wonder if he knows how to get the most out of attacking players, or if he's more suited to be a defensive coach. You know, maybe he's somebody that needs to he might need to just buy forces of nature type attackers to compensate for maybe his inability to get the most out of attackers, because it was strange how Aubameyang just kind of fell off of a cliff. And when you see that almost every attacker that we have go through periods of falling off of a cliff and looking like they've never scored a goal before and bereft of any sort of confidence, I feel like that ends up being something about the manager and less about the players, because I've seen this before. Aubameyang and Lacazette and them went through this same thing where they just could not score a goal. And we know that at the very least, Aubameyang can score goals. I didn't love his attitude, never did, but it's strange to me that Arteta always has attackers go through these periods. So, if he brings in, if we spend a lot of money on an attacker, he needs to be able to get the most out of them. I worry about bringing in, because he's not getting the most out of what he has right now, but if you bring in £100 million striker, is he going to waste that? Is he going to try to make them fucking hold the ball up in the center circle? Or is he just going to figure out a way to get Saka and Martinelli in advanced positions to feed the striker? Because he's going to have to get them into that mode, out of goal scoring mode and into a support role. And if even Manchester City struggled in the beginning with Haaland, how do you think we're going to do? So it's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, Jabu says, I get the argument, but Saka and Martinelli and Odegaard had the most goal contributions last season. Surely Arteta can take some credit for that. He can take some credit, but it hasn't continued past this season. So yeah, he can take some credit for that, but in his 4 seasons at Arsenal, he's only had 1 good season of attack. 1. So the odds is that he doesn't really know how to get a consistent attack. I don't think I've ever seen a Klopp team fail to attack, ever. One thing Klopp knows how to do is attack. That's it. They always score goals. They may leak, but they always score. So I think, yeah, Saka and Martinelli and Odegaard were good last season, but that was 1 season. Why is it that they've fallen off of a cliff this season? And why does everybody who plays up front look like they cannot score a goal? They need to relax. They need to relax. They're just not relaxed in front of goal. I just feel like you need to bring in somebody whose only job and is confident scoring goals, and cannot be shook up. You need somebody that's not scared, because they're shook. Vig says Arteta's system isn't meant for a proper number 9. It works with a false 9 where the majority of the play relies on build-up play and link-up play. I disagree on this a little bit. I think our system has actually moved away from the false nine. I don't really think that, Jesus looks that good in our system. I actually thought for the majority of the game when Havertz was playing, he looked okay. He actually looked fine, and he wasn't really false nining. He didn't really get the ball and play any of our players in. He mostly just made runs into the channels, which is what a normal number 9 would do, make runs into the channels. The problem that we had was like Saka got into a goal scoring position. He was played in behind by White. And instead of just playing it across to Havertz for a tap in, he tried to do a twirl and fucking lost the ball. Like, I do think our system is actually more suited to a clinical number 9 now than it ever has been, because our false 9, like our number 9, even when Gabriel Jesus plays there, he doesn't move. He doesn't move. He just stays in the box. And a false 9 is going to drop deep. They're going to do this, but any striker that we have is going to do a little bit of link up. They're going to hold up the ball a little bit. They're going to run the channels, and they're going to be involved a little bit. But what Havertz was doing yesterday was not a false 9. It was a striker. He was just shit at striking. We were just shit at striking. Do you know what I mean? I actually think our system is more built for a number 9 now than it was last season, because Jesus is not allowed to come out of the box and do all the bullshit that he was doing. He's not doing it anymore. And I think that's why Nketiah is playing more minutes than he was last season. Mr. Mad Hatter says Arteta tries to be as strict as Pep with the attack, but doesn't have the skill. There is a reason he doesn't play Trossard. He doesn't like improvisation. And I've said this before, who would Trossard would play a lot under Wenger, and so would ESR. Under Wenger, those two would be starting. They would, because they play off the cuff. They don't play in patterns. And Trossard, as much as people don't like him, the reason why they don't like him is because he makes mistakes while he's trying to do fancy shit. And that's stuff that Arsene always loved. He would always allow you to make mistakes, because you would be creating. But Arteta likes for things to be choreographed so that there's less chance of things hurting him going the other direction. And I think there needs to be a little bit more improvisation in our attack, because the way that our players are playing right now, it's like fucking robots. You know what I mean? But yeah, Trossard doesn't play because he would play in the 2010s for Arsenal. He would have been somebody that they would have bought. He would have played with Rosicky and Kleb and these guys and Nasri. He would have played with them, because that's the type of game that he plays. None of them were athletes. None of them were fast or anything. But what they did have was skill. And Trossard is in the wrong era at Arsenal for sure. He is. He's in the wrong one. But last but not least, what I want to talk about is just something really quick that is like such a nonsense, but I'm just going to touch on it just because it's out there. But Arsenal are showing interest in Spinazzola. Hilarious. Arsenal are showing interest in Spinazzola, who will end his experience at Roma in June as a free agent. And the first thing I saw when I looked his ass up, because I was like, what is he like? I haven't thought about this man. I remember he was like the best player in the Euros before he got injured. You guys remember that? It was Spinazzola, because that whole Italian team was playing amazing. But he got that injury, and that was it. He looked great. But the first thing that I saw, the first headlines was Roma trying to offload Spinazzola at all costs. They want this man gone. I don't want anybody in our team that people are desperate to get rid of. I'll keep it all the way funky with y'all. It sounds crazy. But they may be trying to get rid of him because he's out of contract in the summer. But he's 30, Inter to hold talks with Spinazzola. That's probably a better option for him. He needs to keep his ass in Italy because we don't need him. We don't need him. We don't need him. He looks old. This is like a Conte at Spurs signing or a Mourinho signing. This is not something Arsenal should be doing because this ain't, you can keep old spinach dip right where he's at. Nope. He's old. They're desperate to get rid of him, and he ain't going to no Premier League club. Now, they're saying Aston Villa are interested in him. Fine, whatever, I don't want this guy. I can just, is it giving Lichtsteiner? Is it? It feels like it is. No thanks. But they are trying to sell him, so he'll probably go somewhere in January, but it cannot be Arsenal. It cannot. It cannot. The old spinach dip. You know? No thanks. So yeah, let's see. MM says Locatelli vibes. Social Join says Arteta and his team is talent ideas pants, can't be real. DR says, can we stop calling it Arteta's system? It's not a system, it's Pep's system. And what we have is clone that lacks some chromosomes. Maybe. Maybe. But I do not sense as much consistency between Pep and Arteta. I think for me, like the way that Arteta and Pep play are completely different. So, and I've been saying that. I think that people are like, oh my God, he's just trying to copy Pep, but he can't copy him. Arteta does so many things that are different than Pep. I think people are just keeping on with that same narrative that he's just copying Pep because he took a couple of Man City players. Arteta is very different than Pep, and I don't think he's trying to copy him. I really don't. I just don't see a copy. Actually, I'd prefer him to just copy his homework because what he's doing now is making me nervous because it's less Pep and more Moyes than anything else, you know? Foxy says Spinazzola sums Arsenal. Grimaldo was there for free last summer. I said we should have got Grimaldo, and we didn't. He's at Leverkusen fucking smashing it. Don't know why we bring in an old ass Spinazzola. Aha says Jess. Thoughts on Arteta saying that last season's attacking output was a one-off. We've had this Ramsdale plus concentration, Zinchenko plus defending, Jesus plus scoring, all being said in 1 year. Excuse me. Yeah, I think that hearing him say that for me is like the worst thing that he could have said because I was somebody that actually backed the team to do the same, more or less. I did not anticipate Martinelli falling off a cliff like this. I thought we would just continue the way that we were scoring because even at the end of last season, even when things got tough, we still scored goals. We scored 2 goals against Liverpool, 2 goals against West Ham, 3 goals against Southampton. So even when the going got tough, we still were scoring goals. I think there was only like Forest where we got shut out in Brighton. But at that point, it was like they just wanted the pressure off. And then once the pressure was off again, they scored 5 goals against Wolves in the end of the season. So I anticipated us continuing to score those goals as a group. And I did not anticipate this level of fall off because I thought Arteta had solved his ever-present issue of not being able to get the attack going, which was always the issue prior to last season. Now, if he had said, I believe these players can hit the same numbers that they did last season, that would make more sense than what he said there. Because for him to have known that it was a one-off or got the feeling that it was a one-off and not buy an attacker, a clinical attacker, is just, again, it's negligence. It's just ridiculous. It makes no sense. You have 200 million to spend in the summer and you had 65 million that you could have spent on 2 attackers. You could have went cheap and bought Kudus and another fucking striker or attacker. You could have done that. You didn't. You left us for dead. You left us for dead. You knew, So he's reactive. I feel like the club is reactive. They wait for things to break and then they start making changes. And then in the time that, because there's a lot of things that we said in the season that we finished 5th, there were things that we had spoken about that ended up collapsing our season. And we didn't solve them until the season after. Right? So like in the season that we finished 5th, the problem that we had was that we knew Tierney's injury was always going to collapse our season. And it did. In the season that we finished 5th, his injury was one of the most significant because he's injury prone. And so we had lost him and we were playing Cedric. We were playing Rob Holding as well. We had loads of defensive injuries and it collapsed our season. So then once it had collapsed our season, because we knew Tierney was injury prone, we've known since the beginning, right? We brought in Zinchenko, which kind of solved that problem. In the meantime, we kind of solved it. But then we had like another problem that we knew of, which was Thomas Partey, but we didn't solve it. And Thomas Partey's whatever not being available, more defensive injuries are the reason why our season collapsed and we finished second. So the thing is like it takes until it fully collapses a season for Arsenal to address it. So what did we feel like in the summer? That we needed a world-class midfielder to replace Granit Xhaka and or an attacker. And we did neither. And both of those things will be the reason why our season collapses, you know? And so we just wait until something is so obvious to make a decision. We're so reactive. The only times that we do well is when we're proactive. We were proactive in selling Willock. That was a really good sale. We're never proactive. You know, we will wait until there's no value for Reece Nelson or Emil Smith Rowe and no value at all for Nketiah to be desperate to sell them. And we'll get nothing for any of them because we're so reactive, you know? And so, yeah, like the Arteta saying that was like a gun, it was like a shot to the chest. I'm like, so you knew that these guys weren't going to do this? I actually thought they could because I rate our front players a lot. I think they need a gunman to accompany them and maybe another backup, but I rate Saka and Odegaard and Martinelli a lot. I was like, you know what? They will be able to hit those numbers again. They'll be able to do it. You know why? Because I think that they're good enough. But Arteta knowing that they couldn't and not doing anything, again, is nonsense. Like, why haven't you done anything about it then? Why did you bring on why didn't you bring in like any other attacker other than Havertz? Havertz isn't even one, you know? Lucas says Big Gab doesn't need to apologize on IG. I hope he's not apologizing. First of all, I don't want to see any apologies, and I definitely don't want to see apologies from the four that played well yesterday. I just don't feel like I don't think Gabriel and Saliba have deserved any of the nonsense that has happened over the last couple of weeks. They have been let down massively by the players around them, and so I don't want to see Big Gab doing any like apology. I don't want to hear any apologies. I want you guys to go to fucking Dubai and erase all of this from your memory and start like it's the beginning of the season against Crystal Palace. I love Big Gab so much, but he just doesn't need to even come on social media. You know, forget it. You didn't do anything, you know? Social Join says, go get a striker that runs in behind and disrupts back lines. That will free up space and pressure on Martinelli and Saka. Salah Udine says, Jess, I think he's indirectly speaking to the Arsenal hierarchy regarding a one-off. He is the Arsenal hierarchy. Like I don't like that. Like when we get a signing right, it's all Arteta. But when we get signings wrong, then we start looking at Edu. They are a team. They work together. David Ornstein wrote up a big ass article after the summer window, after we bought Declan Rice and Havertz, and spoke about how Edu and Arteta worked together and how Arteta actually had to convince the transfer team to bring in Havertz. That is his signing. So he decided instead of bringing in an attacker that he was going to bring in a player that was neither attacker nor midfielder. He did that. He is the Arsenal hierarchy. He has so much power. Remember, he is no longer a coach. He is a manager. So he's doing a lot of that shit too. Nothing is going down without his say-so, as far as I'm concerned. So Arteta is doing this. Arteta is doing this, and so is Edu. It's nonsense. Buying Havertz was a nonsense, you guys. Like, you know? And that's just me, though. Let's see. Foxy says, would you take Vlahovic? Scored another great last-minute winner for Juve yesterday. You need that type to take chances. Giroud would start in this team if he was at Arsenal. I don't think people understand how bad our attackers are right now. Not necessarily Saka and these guys because whatever, but our strikers. We have Jesus, who's doing his best impression of Lacazette right now. He is in the mental spiral, and he has declined physically after that knee injury. And Eddie. I could name so many other clubs that have better options as strikers. Brighton have better options as strikers because they have Evan Ferguson and Welbeck. Yeah, I said it. Welbeck and fucking Evan Ferguson and João Pedro are better striker options than what we have. They are. Bowen is a better striking option than what we have, and he's not even a striker. Newcastle have better striking options than us in Isak and Wilson. And you don't have to look far before you see a team that has better striking options than Arsenal Football Club. We are low, because now that Gabby has lost his ability to play consistently, whether it's through the lack of burst and sharpness from the knee injury or what's going on up here, he's almost useless to us. Because in the Premier League, we have to be honest, Gabriel Jesus has been abysmal. He's been really poor in the Premier League. Those Champions League performances were really papering over the fact that he has not been good this season at all. Not at all. There's been little glimpses here and there, like against Wolves, where he did some nice stuff, but ultimately we have seen such a lack of production in that. And the next guy up is Eddie. We have some of the worst striker options. Like, you could put Solanke and Hwang as our striking options and we would get better results. We just would, I don't know why people don't see that. It's really bad. So, obviously looking at somebody like Onana is not going to get the juices flowing because he's not an attacker. But Arsenal are not going to veer away from this plan. And so what I'll say right now is that if we go through this entire season and we miss out on our targets like we always do because we're reactive and not proactive, and we're pussies in the January window because we don't want to veer away from the plan, right? If we do that and then we settle for a striker that is not like world class or does not have the ability to become world class, I am going to be hot because you will have wasted another season where we could have won trophies, could go begging because we don't have a striker. And so if we go into that window and we're pussyfooting around and we're acting like we want to buy some project striker or we go out there and get Tony, I'm going to lose my shit because I expect the best to come from this. There has to be a reason why you waited, And so I don't think it's just Osimhen either. I don't think you can Osimhen is the only striker that will, because again, our bar is very low. When we get a decent striker in this team, I think all of us might cry tears of joy because we have forgotten what it's like to have a decent striker in our team. We haven't had one in a long time. Once Aubameyang fell off, we have not had a gunman in the team. Aubameyang left in 2020? 2020? We're in 2024 now. It's been a while, So once we get one in there, it's going to feel real different. Because Saka, he's going to brighten up. Odegaard, he's going to brighten up. These players are going to look so much better because they can just hit somebody and they're not going to, I don't know, fluff their lines every time, But I don't want to see any nonsense about we're going to get this project striker or whatever. You need to go out there and spend that money. I need you to go to Sporting and go get that guy. I need you to go buy Sesko. I need you to go buy somebody that's going to do the business, none of this nonsense, So yeah, I don't even care if we can't afford Osimhen. There are other strikers out there that you could get that look like they could do it. So it doesn't just need to be Osimhen, but don't do nonsense. Don't go out there and get a project or somebody that does not have the raw materials to become world class. Don't do that, and don't get another false nine. Social Join says we can't afford Osimhen. Sesko, Vlahovic are all there. Won't do it. The guy rather play outdated false nine. I think we'll go out and get a striker. I think as disappointed as we are, I think we are going to go out and get a striker. I feel like that's pretty obvious. We'll just get him too late. Lucas says Gyökeres or whatever was good in the championship. Sporting was an interesting move for him. He's so interesting because I feel like he might be like a Harry Kane that was like a slow burner or a late bloomer, because as much as I'm trying to deny, like the first couple of times I watched him, I was like, man, it's just the Portuguese league. No, that guy looks good. He looks very good. And I'm like, if you put him in the team, I don't care where you come from, by the way. I think strikers do bloom. Some of them do bloom a little bit later. So if the move was be in the championship, and then I think he was at Brighton, wasn't he? While they're in the championship, move to Sporting, explode there, and then come back to the Premier League, I'm down for that because that guy looks fucking bomb. Now you have Boniface or Boniface, you have freaking Sesko, you have Vlahovic, you have tons of options. Just go get one of those. Don't do anything out the side. Like, go get somebody that's at least 6 foot tall, that offers, you could run him behind, physical presence, ball striking, because none of our players can lock their freaking ankle. Those shots that Havertz was taking yesterday, you guys, the shots, I could have taken those, you know? So yeah, that's just me. Lucas says we might move to 4-2-3-1 with a double pivot of Rice and Zubamendi, traditional striker. And we should. I love a 4-2-3-1. I don't know why it's like desperate to play 4-3-3. That I don't want to play that anymore. I love a traditional 4-3-3. It gets me. I like it. I love it. You know why? Because you can also do overlapping fullbacks with that, and we should probably buy an overlapping fullback in the summer to give us something different. Timber's not going to be that, but Timber is going to replace one of our fullbacks. So the other fullback might do well if they can overlap, or do both, underlap and overlap, whatever. But in the summer, go out there and get the guy that can wear the number 14 and it not look like it's wearing them. Because I am sorry, but the fact that we gave that to Eddie almost ruined me, because numbers do mean something to me. I'm a traditionalist. I'm old school. Numbers that are worn by special players need, we have been disrespecting the number 14 for a while, and whoever's going to come in is going to get that number, but I'm down for a 4-2-3-1. Declan Rice plus Zubamendi plus Odegaard plus a traditional number 9 plus Saka, maybe another winger, and just let's go. Let's go. But all of that's going to happen in the summer because these guys aren't going to do anything in January. Social Join says Tierney on loan. Tierney's going to be back in Scotland, I think. Jamal says we could get the second coming of Henri. Arteta wouldn't use him properly. Social Join says number 14-10 should not be handed out without Terry and Bergkamp approval. I'm a traditionalist. Like, I just am. I'm a traditionalist. I just feel like numbers mean something, and it always felt weird giving Eddie the number 14, which also shows how high he is up. Like, the fact that they would even consider letting him have it. Kuvi says, hi, Jess. Hope you're well. Arteta and his tactics suck. It wasn't the tactics yesterday, you guys. I am still trying to understand why people are talking about the tactics when we created four big chances and we missed them all. We created 5 big chances against West Ham and missed them all. I think where he got the tactics wrong was against Fulham, but he corrected that. Against Fulham, he had Kivior inverting with Havertz in midfield, and he changed that. Against Liverpool, he decided to balance out his midfield with Jorginho, and because he didn't have Zinchenko, and don't let Kivior invert. And so we were building through very easily. When somebody tells me that the tactics are wrong, I think we struggled to create chances or build up. We had no problem creating chances or building up. We had those problems against Fulham, but we have not had those problems since Wolves. We have not. We have been so good in everything else but scoring goals. So that, to me, that's not tactics. That's the players are lacking confidence, and we don't have a gunman, and Arteta needs to figure that out, because it's been 7-8 games where we've been talking about not scoring goals and not creating chances. No, but you can't blame Zinchenko. You can't blame Raya. You can't blame any of those things anymore. It's not those things. It's the defense is going to leak goals as long as we're not scoring goals. We need to score goals. Goals change games. It demoralizes teams. It does. We have not demoralized teams. If you score 2 goals early, Liverpool just say, fuck it. We didn't want to be in this anyway, but we encouraged them, and they eventually got the goal. Goals change games. So I'm trying to understand what the tactics were that should have been changed yesterday, because maybe I'm trying to think of what tactics could have been changed, because personnel and tactics are not the same thing. Dan said, did you say sorry to Northside yet? For what? Why would I apologize? The funny thing about those streams is we basically say the same things, but he yells and I talk in a normal voice. So why would I apologize for somebody who I didn't necessarily agree with? I feel like he lied about a lot of things. He lies about a lot of things, like nobody had any problems with Elneny resigning. Go back on this channel and look where I bitched and moaned about Elneny resigning. Nobody cared about Nketiah getting a new contract. Go back in this channel and see where I bitched and moaned about Nketiah getting the number 14 and a new contract. So I'm not going to apologize to Northside for agreeing with a lot of things that he said, but also calling him out on his nonsense. I don't agree that Saka, Odegaard, Martinelli, all these players are shit. I don't. And I'm a person that actively gets shit because I say that the manager needs to be looked at. So no, I will not apologize. I will not apologize to somebody that's sitting in their living room yelling and screaming and acting like they're holding up standards when that's not really doing anything. Sorry. Northside is a good guy, but I'm not apologizing to somebody when I haven't said anything wrong. What have I been wrong about? What have I been wrong about? Absolutely nothing. Like, I've been wrong about nothing. So the fact is that if you're not yelling and screaming, people don't think you're mad enough about what's going on with the club. And I'm an adult. Like, I'm not going to yell and scream and lose my head and embarrass myself because for the sake of looking like I'm keeping standards. That's other people's brand. That's not my brand. And quite frankly, we already have one league gunner. We don't need more, you know? So yeah, Colin says Arteta got to go. He doesn't have a resume. Social Join says Elneny got re-signed because they played him injured and he got injured worse. They owed him. Yeah. Foxy says, didn't Northside say Pepe took Arsenal to Europa League final? Pepe joined Arsenal 3 months after the final. Exactly. I mean, he said, and he also said that Elneny was better than Jorginho. So again, is this your king? This is your king? He said that Elneny is better than Jorginho. This is your king that said Pepe took Arsenal to a Europa League final. Like, he didn't. He didn't. Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Is this your king? Be serious, like, for 1 minute. I haven't been wrong about anything. If you guys can name anything that I've been wrong about in terms of what I've spoken about with the Northside, but I've called him out on his shit as well because he goes too far in the other direction. And he does. I'm not even going to do it. If this is your king, have fun, bow down to him, but I'm not apologizing for shit. Like, I'm not apologizing for shit. What am I going to apologize for? He didn't like who was saying what. He didn't like the messenger, but a lot of people feel the same way. Your messaging doesn't come across when you lie about too many things. And I'm not going to sit around and say that Saka and Odegaard and these players are shit when I don't think that they are. I think the manager needs to be looked at. And I don't think his job should be safe. So what are we actually disagreeing about? You tell me. So yeah, the Mad Hatter says, don't need to say Northside is a good guy. He's a fraud and he's not a real fan for the club. He's on embarrassment. I mean, I just don't really understand why. I feel like some people are just followers. Like, they're just followers and they don't think for themselves. Like, I think for myself, and that's why I stay in my own lane. But I'm not going to agree 100% with somebody that says things that I don't agree with. And just because we're not winning doesn't mean that he's right. And just because when we're winning doesn't mean that the positives are always right. There's always a gray area that gets missed because the only time you can grow on YouTube is when you're totally binary and you lie about shit. I'm seeing people say that the reason why Arteta is going down is because he didn't keep Pepe. What world are we living in where Pepe is the reason why our team is not playing well? What are we talking about anymore? So I will not apologize, and you can take that right over there with you. Like, I don't care. Like, if he wants an apology and he's waiting, I hope he doesn't hold his breath because he will be, like, come on, like, be serious. Animasha says Saka is not shit. He's only been found out. Defenders know he's going to cut in, and especially when nobody is overlapping, his options are always limited. I agree with that. Odd says J5 is the best midfielder in history. Social Join says 18 months and counting down. Hopefully Mikel's gone. I can't take this resource wasting. I think you do need to look at the resources for sure. Lynn says, hi, Jess, our players are under so much pressure from the media. Even when we are winning, the media and our fans will just not back Arsenal. So look at Newcastle. Why isn't the fans going mad like ours? Well, you're Arsenal. You're Arsenal. The media are always looking for an angle to make things negative. From minute one, it was already negative because we weren't good in preseason. We signed Havertz in the goalkeeper situation. So You have to realize that when you're playing for Arsenal, like, you're never going to be able to lose multiple games and nobody talk about it. And so that's why when people are like, "Oh my God, we lose a couple of games and everybody lose their shit," I'm like, because we're a good team. We're a good team. It should not take us to go all the way down into mid-table to start talking about the issues that we have, because we have first world problems now. We're not dealing with finishing eighth. We're beyond that now. There's never going to be a situation where these players do not play under massive pressure. So they need to get used to it. And there's some players that are living up to the standard, and there's some that are not. There's some players that when the lights get bright, they don't seem to be able to perform. And that's something that they need to work on. But also you need to add some players in there that are also going to alleviate some of the pressure. But also the manager needs to alleviate some of the pressure too. He's not doing that. So there's a lot going on here. It's more than just the fans are just freaking out and they just need to calm down. Our season is collapsing, guys. Like, let's be real. There's no more, we're only 5 points off the top and we're still in this and we're still in that. Like, 5 points off at the top could easily become 8 if we don't get our shit together, because we don't look like winning games and we don't look like scoring goals. So I understand the freak out. Now, do I really understand the throw everybody under the bus with no context? No. I don't really understand the fuck Arteta, fuck Adu, fuck Saka, fuck this. So I don't understand that. That's nonsense and that's petulance. But I do think there are conversations in the gray area about how we got here and how we don't feel like we've gotten any better from last season to this season. Those are the conversations I'm interested in having. Not the yelling and screaming, because that's boring. Boxy says, to be honest, our fans have turned a bit on how, oh, you're a Newcastle fan. The media also pushing an agenda about how is close to the sack. Every fan base has fickle fans. It's normal. It's interesting because I do think Howe will get sacked before Mikel Arteta, because I don't think Newcastle will allow anything to, like, I think the ownership they're going to be more open to the project. Isn't about Eddie Howe. It's about Newcastle. And so I do think Eddie Howe will get sacked before Arteta, if the form were to continue and all this kind of stuff. Eddie Howe's been dealt a shitty hand as well, like with massive injuries and stuff like that, but everybody has injuries. So, but I think that's the main problem that I have with the project, is that it's more based on Arteta and less based on Arsenal. Like, we should have a standard of the way that we want to play, the players that we want to bring in, and what we want to achieve. And those things should not be about Arteta. Those things should be about what we want to do. And if Arteta can't bring us to that, then he needs to go and we bring in somebody who can. But it does feel like the project is very much so built around Arteta becoming this manager. And that's what really worries me. But Eddie Howe is an interesting one, because I think he's a short-term thing anyway. I think Newcastle are always going to bring in like a Mourinho or somebody like that to really take them to that next level. So yeah, but everybody does have fickle fans. Everybody does have fickle fans. That is very true. It does feel like Arsenal fans are a lot more fickle. Like, we turn on the players very quickly. Like, 1 minute we were talking about how good these players are, best in the league, but then the next minute we want them sold. And so I haven't really seen that from other fan bases. I think we're the worst at it, but I believe you that every fan base has fickle fans for sure. I personally don't like the manager as much as I like the players. So I'm more likely to turn on Arteta before I am turn on the players. I think the players are really good. Lynn says, Jess, I agree. However, the mentality needs to be looked at, and we may need to bring in someone to educate the players on how to deal with these problems. The mentality comes from the manager. I've always believed that, and I feel like that's always been an old adage, something that's always been the truth, until it comes down to a manager that you're trying to protect. We've always said that the mentality comes from the manager. Always. I think the reason why Arsenal went soft is because Arsenal went soft. I think once the end of those George Graham players left and they become all Arsene players, we got soft because Arsene's soft. I know that's unpopular, but I think he is soft. Great manager, knew how to do attacking football, played beautiful football, all those types of things, knew how to develop youth, all those types of things. He was fantastic, but the mentality was not a winning one, not the one that was going to help us win major honors consistently, especially towards the end. He lost his edge. What can you say? So the mentality comes from the manager always. And I think this team, they're not weak. When the lights are bright, they tend to, falter a little bit. And so they need stronger personalities around them, because every team needs strong players around them to lift them up and carry them through. And I don't think we have enough of those. I think we removed one in Xhaka, replaced it with Havertz. So we really didn't add experience and personality and those types of things. We took away. And then when you look at Arteta, he's a very in the mind person. He doesn't have any. One thing about Arteta is he's very cold. He's very cold, and he's very analytical and scientific in the way that he thinks about things. And I don't think he gets into enough of the other parts of the game. That's how I feel. And so the mentality is definitely something that you need to look at, because science and analytical and the project and the system and all that kind of things can't carry you over. You need the other things. You need passion. Those things, that you need those things. And Arteta doesn't really bring that, in my opinion. So that's where I'm at. Ashish says, Jess, you were saying mentality comes from the manager, and in the same breath saying Arsenal became soft when certain players left, but not the manager, doesn't make sense. So the mentality does come from the manager, but you also need certain players in your team. Arsene got rid of a lot of the strong personalities, and his mentality wasn't strong either. It does come from the manager, 100%. So I thought when the players from the Emirates era that were under George Graham, once they left, they lost a little bit of the 1-0 to the Arsenal, the good defending, that type of stuff. They really lost a lot of that in the mentality. And Arsene didn't replace that mentality on the pitch, and his mentality also wasn't that great. So the mentality comes from the manager, no matter which way you slice it. If he doesn't bring in players that bring in a strong mentality, and he doesn't have a strong mentality, where does it come from? It comes from the manager. And I also think that it all is connected. Klopp's players, the ones that he brings in, mimic what he brings. They mimic what he brings. I think the players that Arteta brings in mimic what he brings. He brings in good players with good technical quality that could be taught and all those types of things, and learn the system and all that. But I don't necessarily feel like he brings in players that have a winning mentality or have experience and stuff like that, because he doesn't bring in players with experience. He brings in players that have just as much experience as he does, so it's all intertwined together. But ultimately, the mentality does come from the manager, because he brings in the players and the players mimic them. We need stronger personalities. We need stronger personalities, but Arteta doesn't bring in strong personalities. He brings in nice players. We have another nice players on our team, and a lot of nice guys, but we need some bastards. You need some players that are they don't give a shit, and you need players that are going to do things outside of the system and create moments of magic and things like that. And he doesn't do that. Everything that he's about is neat, tidy, in the system, analytical, data, all those types of things. But you need the other things. See, Wilder says, apart from Declan, but yeah, the others. Exactly. They're all nice guys. You need some of those guys. And I wonder if Arteta, the one thing about his personality that I don't really like that much is, one of those things is I would prefer a manager that's a little bit warmer. I think he's quite cold. But I think that he has this sense of injustice and all this type of stuff, and we've been done wrong. And I don't think it necessarily is translating into a siege mentality. Is translating into a woe is me mentality. And I don't like how our players capitulate when they don't get the calls that they feel like they should be getting. I think we look for calls too much. I think we look for the referees to do too much for us. I feel like that comes from the manager a little bit as well. This woe is me. I'm getting kicked. I'm getting fouled. I'm getting this and that. And it takes them out of the game. At the end of the game, not even the end, last 30 minutes of the game, there's just too much remonstrating because we weren't getting the calls. And I just feel like that comes from the manager. But yeah, that's just me. Legume says, Andre Onana to Arsenal is such a vibe. I want this. Yeah, so you want that Declan Rice Onana pivot. That would be interesting. Nabil says mentality is based on the man management and the coaching. The manager is responsible for that. I didn't even know who the vice captain was until I checked in Wikipedia. It's Jesus and Jorginho. Arteta's very covert around the leadership group, and I don't really understand why he is. He's covert about things I don't think he needs to be covert about. Just say who the captain is. Who cares? But yeah, I think that, listen, we've spoken a lot, and we still need to do another show in a couple of hours at 9 p.m. So we're going to do that as well, and look and see what else is going on. But stay safe, guys. And make sure you guys are back at 9 p.m. for the next show. Like this video and subscribe to the channel on your way out. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Love y'all. Bye.